Hey guys, my name is Zoe, and today I would like to share some acting tips with you that I have learned over the years. Now, these acting tips aren't really any professional acting tips. I've only been in maybe 3 commercials, really, and I haven't done that much film work. These tips are more catered to film and television just because that's what I feel more comfortable with. And I feel like my opinions on theater performance is, they're not as valid as mine for film and television. So, the first one that I would like to cover is background reactions. These are the reactions that aren't the protagonist in that scene. Usually there's like a main focus and then the people surrounding that scene. Their reactions can sometimes draw attention from the main focus of that scene, and I feel like that's a big deal that people don't really cover a lot. So when you're in a scene and let's say the protagonist is doing something like telling a story, doing a cartwheel, etc., they're the main focus, and your reaction is supposed to just be like a little cherry on the top of the whole sundae. You're really not supposed to overreact unless it's, say, a commercial and the director tells you to act really shocked and they keep telling you to pump it up. Obviously follow the direction, but there are cases where you're just told to do what feels right, and I feel like that's the hardest for people to figure out. So, how to not overreact. Usually just focus, listen, and pay attention to the scene and your surroundings. A lot of the time there are other actors too that are also reacting. You kind of want to match that energy, because if you're all kind of off, somebody might stand out, and it's better to match them rather than do something different. Because let's say there are a bunch of people who are really overreacting, and then there's one person who is just, you know, straight-faced, and maybe they were directed that way, but everybody else just did something different. They should match with everybody else, simply because it draws attention from the main focus, and if you weren't directed to act differently from everybody else, you shouldn't be. And I feel like that's the biggest thing, is really just be aware of your surroundings. Don't think about it too much. You kind of want to just do what feels right. All I can say is a lot of noises just really aren't necessary when you're doing background reactions. The slight noises you can do, like a small gasp, but I think people go overboard sometimes, and I notice it on television, and it does draw my attention to them rather than the main focus, and I have trouble paying attention. Okay, I will give an example of that. This would be my reaction to somebody telling a story. Once upon a time, I made up a story to overdub a video I made. And I did this. Anyway, second acting tip. When you're trying to make yourself cry, don't think about sad stuff to make yourself cry. I know this works for some people and it works really well. They can just think of something traumatic that they've been through and immediately produce tears. But I really think there are other ways to do it, and I'm not bashing this technique at all because I've used it, and I know a lot of other people who use it because it's convenient and it's real and it feels right for them. But there are other ways to do it. The first way to work on your crying without actually crying is to work on your cry face. Your cry face is really important because a lot of people think they can just be a pretty crier. Some people can, and it works for them, but it's more convincing if you really just let it go. Just like let out your cry face. My chair is making squeaky noises. But yeah, just let out your cry face. Mine are pretty ugly, but it is what it is. You gotta be realistic, okay? So I will give you an example of my cry face. I think a lot of it is what feels natural. I know I keep saying that, but it really is just trying to see what feels right.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out.
I know it looks stupid, it does, but with the right music, the right scene, the right lines, it works. And if you guys want some examples of some cry faces that I really appreciate, I like Toni Collette, Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad, Emmy Rossum in Shameless, Sean Penn, he was especially good in I Am Sam. I watched that movie and was just bawling the entire time. Of course, Leonardo DiCaprio, just anytime he cries, it's so good. There are a lot more, but I think if you just look up some examples of cry faces, you'll notice that you don't really have to produce tears to be a convincing crier. Okay, the second step to a convincing cry without actually making yourself cry is to produce a lot of saliva. I see a lot of actors when they open their mouth when they're crying, which is like the like yawn type of look where they have like their face squished up and they're like
all around me.
Like that. There's usually like a string of saliva in their mouth. It brings so much realism into the way that they're crying. I don't know how to explain how it makes me feel, but I genuinely feel like they're crying when I see saliva. I don't know why. It's because it's not pretty. Like an unattractive cry just feels more real. Breathe loudly. Hyperventilating and like shortness of breath, it's realistic. When you're crying, you're not gonna be a silent breather. Nobody does that when they really cry. So you're not gonna stand there with your mouth completely shut with like a single tear coming down your cheek. No, nobody's gonna feel anything from that because it's not real enough. I don't want to weird out my parents right now because I'm making a video, but little cries like that are really just little things that help the scene. Yeah, the fourth one is to yawn with your mouth closed. This is something I've actually done before in acting class. It's really easy to make myself yawn. I don't know if that's the same for other people, but I can like force a yawn just by like expanding my throat. And after a while, I don't know if you can see, but I've started to produce some tears. They're not coming out, obviously, but if I wait a while. Your eyes water from fatigue and dryness, so honestly, keeping your eyes open for a long time and just yawning. I don't know which number this is. The last one is eye drops and nasal spray. Eye drops work. Usually there are some scenes where you have enough time to drop an eye drop in. Unless it's a scene where you have to produce tears on the spot, you can use eye drops. You don't need to be afraid to use eye drops. It's normal and it looks good. Nasal spray is really good. You want your nose to be stuffy. When you're going like this, it's realistic. It just is. Your nose is always going to be stuffy when you cry. Everybody cries and gets a stuffy nose. That's what's normal. Whenever I see actors who just sit there with a tear rolling down their cheek, it's like the biggest pet peeve of mine. Nobody cries like that unless they're really not that upset. And that is how to cry without actually crying. Here's the third tip. Listen to the director. A good director knows what they're doing, and if they haven't asked you to change anything, don't change it, even if you think that they want more options, because they most likely want more takes that are exactly the same or very similar to what you're already doing if they're not telling you to change anything. So if they don't say anything about changing what you're doing, you shouldn't change it. You can adjust it slightly if you feel like something's wrong, and they probably sensed it was wrong too. Yeah, you can go ahead and change that. But if they're not making any complaints and you feel like they were really proud of the last one, don't change it, really. Now, if the director says that they don't like it or they're very vague about what's wrong with it, then you should go through whatever it is in your head while pretending to be them. And I know this is weird, but there's a way to kind of recognize the behaviors of the director, and if there's something that you feel is natural on them, you might want to use it in the scene yourself if you have no clue what to do or what to start with. Try to imagine how they would say it, and I feel like that really helps. If you can recognize any speech patterns and anything they say, saying a line like them is going to be so familiar to them and real and natural that it will seem better, just simply because that's what they're used to. And a lot of acting is directors, casting directors, being familiar with you. This is the fourth tip. Matching the energy. Now, matching the energy isn't about matching the volume or the pace, it's about matching the acting style. I mean, yes, it can be about volume and pace, but your acting style can't be too far off from the majority of the group. If you're told to match the energy of somebody, it's usually referring to your acting style and how it's too far off from the majority of the cast. Sometimes it's not, because, you know, obviously there's contrast in character, and at that point it might be volume and pace, but if they're very neutral characters that are supposed to be acting natural, then you really should match the energy the acting style of the rest of the group. And last but not least, I want to share a list of favorite actors, directors, and producers. There's obviously Quentin Tarantino, Edgar Wright, Jodie Foster, Jesse Eisenberg, Emmy Rossum. Thank you for watching. I hope that this video helped you in some way. I feel like you could use some of these techniques practicing with a monologue at home during quarantine. I know right now it's really hard. A lot of people are out of acting lessons and theater and auditions and commercials right now, so a lot of actors really aren't doing what they're used to. Anyway, thank you. I don't know how to end a video. My little sister edited this entire video. Okay, that's it. I'm not doing it anymore. That's it.